The B.S. Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
this is the B.S. Report with Bill Simmons.
It might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The B.S. Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The B.S. Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the B.S. Report. A sunny Monday here in Southern California. Not so sunny yesterday for the United States. A collapse down the stretch against Japan. We lost the Women's World Cup. I can't believe I care about this. On the Subway Fresh Take hotline right now in Vancouver, he's on like a half-second delay, so every time I think I talk to him, it'll sound like he does know what he's saying, but I think it's just a delay. But he's here. Rob Stone, what's happening?
It's the international delay. We'll let it slide, right?
Yeah.
Things break down once you cross the border.
Hey, the riots in Vancouver really set the landlines back a long way. So, what I thought it'd be a good time to talk since we just had a major soccer event, and also your beloved Tampa Rays and my Red Sox went to the 16th inning.
Yeah.
And a sad day for me. I fell asleep during the 13th inning, which would have been fine if I was on the East Coast, but I was on the West Coast, and it was an East Coast game. We're old, Stoner.
Yeah, I know. I actually caught it in a Vancouver drinking establishment and sat there for the last 4 innings, being reminded that the alcohol content is stronger in Canada than it is in the U.S.
That is very true.
16-inning game a little bit of a challenge. Yeah,
you know what I was enjoying?
My beloved race.
I was enjoying the shots of the old people in the stands who were hanging around for this late game that stretched past midnight, and then I realized that they just couldn't move.
Yeah, well, I mean, that and, they can sleep in for the rest of the day. It's not like they got to get to work or anything.
So you think they were asleep? That's interesting. I didn't think of that. I just thought that they just reached a point where they were like, screw this, I'm just sitting here and I'll be here for tomorrow's game,
Bill, it's very comfortable at the Trop. It's the air conditioning is set right there at about 72. They got nice seats. They got people taking care of them. There's food there. Where else would they want to go?
Yeah. Well, let's come back to that. I want to talk about soccer because I felt this way as I watched the game, and now it's become a little bit of a. I was listening to Colin Cowherd today, driving around, and he was talking about it, and I know on Twitter people talked about it, and it kind of felt like a choke a little bit. Is it fair to say they choked, or is okay? Go ahead.
You know what it is? I think it's a combo of choke and destiny. And I'm a big fan of destiny. I love that, especially in sporting events. But there's no way you can't say it's a choke job. You had 2 leads twice in late stages of regulation and overtime. You're a fit team. You have experience. There's no reason they shouldn't have won. And I guess maybe the fault lies in the fact that they weren't able to put away their chances in the first half because they had some great stuff and cracking the hardwood several times, and you just, as it progressed, you just kind of got this feeling like, oh man, Japan's going to do this. Japan's going to come back, and they pulled an American game. Really, I mean, if America was wearing the Japanese uniforms, you would say, oh, classic America. There's the heart, the soul, the never say die, scratching and clawing to come back, a la the Brazil game. But they got beat at their own game by Japan, and you know what? I was actually okay with it. Like, I moved on pretty quickly. The thing that resonated with me was the same thing that resonated last summer when the U.S. men got knocked out of the World Cup, was just this theme of lost opportunity for the sport and for the players here in the United States. When Alex Morgan scored that goal to put the U.S. up 1-0, my first line as I yelled out in the hotel room was, she'll be on Letterman on Tuesday. And that's not going to be the case anymore.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think Abby Wambach and Hope Solo are on Letterman on Tuesday.
They may be, but it won't be the same, right?
No.
The fact that the U.S. women are going to come back and they're going to have some, celebration games, but it won't be the same. You don't really want to celebrate the second place team as much as you do a winner. There's a lot of lost money for the federation and for the players with appearances and sponsorship deals. That's what makes me feel bad. And I know people are like, oh, it's not about the money, it's about the game. I get it. But for the soccer players, particularly American soccer players, they need to have money in mind because they're not raking it up, particularly female soccer players. And I feel bad that there's a lot of lost opportunities out there for him. But
hold on though. The Japan thing.
Yeah.
First of all, it was a weird game to watch because it's just almost impossible to root against Japan. Like, I was rooting for America, but it's not like you can be like, oh, man, Japan, I hate these guys. Like,
right, you can't be mad at it.
It wasn't the case.
It's impossible.
No. And it was the kind of story that was very reminiscent, I felt like, of the Saints a few years ago, or just one of those, like, where real life became part of the sports story. The Yankees in those 3 games after 9/11 in the World Series.
Right.
And then also they had the nobody believed in us factor, the whole tournament, which we've learned not to bet against in sports. Even yesterday, that they were 2.5 to 1 underdogs, and then you watch the first 25 minutes. I mean, the U.S. could have scored 4 goals, and they dominated. And it really felt like Japan was overmatched. And I was watching it going, all right, well, Japan, obviously a little Cinderella story, but now they're this is where it ends right here. I can't believe they came back.
It's the heart of that country, and that's the way, they work and live in that country, and that's the way they play and how they represent it. The men's national team is the same way. They play with that heart and that intensity and that drive and that keep going, and you have to admire it. I feel like our society in America has kind of gotten away from that to some extent, and I enjoy watching that. And you're right, just what that country has gone through. I think that was a big part of the feelings post game, not only by the fans, but by the players as well of the U.S. That country's been through a lot, and if we were to lose to anybody, it's them, and I'm okay with it. And I think it's an opportunity missed, but I think it's one that the players and the fans will get over fairly quickly, just because it was Japan, and I think they're legitimately happy for them in the country.
Let's talk about coaching, because I like to complain about the coaching when the wrong team wins, and it did feel like America was more talented, and I don't know. I know this is why we play the games, but those two teams play 10 times. I think the U.S. wins 8. Just look at all the chances they had compared to Japan. The one thing that jumped out at me, when he took out Megan Rapinoe with 5 minutes left, and that's somebody I want kicking penalty kicks just in case. Right. I thought that was a weird move, or am I just
no? It's funny. I got a tweet about that just a few minutes ago, and that was something we discussed. I was watching the game here in Vancouver with former U.S. men's captain John Harkes, and it's fun watching games with guys who have played at the highest level and their insight and what they see, because it's always a little bit different from what we see. But that sub jumped out right away. You're taking out one of the most industrious players out there who can put up some wild shots but can also create some stuff and make some wonderful crosses. And my feeling at the time was, look, they've got the lead. They're starting to lose their legs a little bit. Get some freshness in there to bust your tail and kill this game off. And it backfired. Had the U.S. won and held on, I don't think anybody would have made a comment about it, and it would have not even been a focus point pre or post game, like, oh, what a great sub that was.
Right.
And that's what coaches, John Harkes was talking about this yesterday, and this is a big dilemma for coaches, because if you put on a player that late, you are setting yourself up for skepticism. If you put that player on a little bit earlier, that little conversation goes away. But when it's so close to the closing of the game and the pace is already at some place and the heartbeat of that game is somewhere, and you're pulling somebody somewhat cold to go in there and try and replicate where that game is, it's very challenging, and you have to do it with the right type of player, and it obviously didn't work for the U.S. last night. And
well, you know what? It reminded me a little bit of when the Red Sox pinch ran for David Ortiz, 3rd and 2nd last night. He was on second base. Not really sure what the point of that was either, because you see that in baseball sometimes where they kind of overthink, let's take out our number 4 hitter because
playing for that
somebody
one
who's a tiny bit faster. Yeah, and the other thing is, I'm never a fan of changing what's working, and I felt like it was really working with Rapinoe coming off the bench. Look at this. I actually watch these games. I thought it was like a J.J. Barea type thing I said last week, where she would come in and kind of change the pace of the game. To start her in the final seemed like kind of a weird thing. Why change what's working?
Yeah, no, I agree. And to make big changes in the final game, I can understand it maybe in a quarterfinal or something like that, but when all the focus, when the extra focus is there and the tension is there even more, any little tweaks, I think kind of upset the balance of your team, and you have to be really careful about that. Now, if there's an injury or something, that's understandable, but if you're saying to yourself, you know what, I just kind of got this gut feeling that I need to tweak this and do this, you have to think of the impact of what that means for the 11 on the field and the 3 that may come on afterwards. And, yeah, you're right, Bill. It's big ramifications, and I too, am a big fan of, if it ain't broken, don't change it. Keep running with it.
And this is something you see in baseball a lot, and you'll see in the playoffs where the closers used to coming in the 9th inning all the time. Then there'll be some big game, and all of a sudden they're bringing the closer in the 8th inning, and he gets shelled. And it's like, well, why did we change this time? You shouldn't change what you're doing because the game's bigger. If anything, you should keep what you're doing because that's the structure that you have. And now you could argue that in the first 25 minutes, they created so many scoring chances, and some of them probably should have gone in and could have gone in, and maybe it was a good move. But I like that monkey wrench of her coming in the second half. I thought that was what really set this team apart, kind of.
Yeah, I think every coach in any sport is looking for that game changer, that spark plug. That's a valuable commodity that a lot of folks overlook in any sport. And, that goes back to high school. Playing high school basketball, your coach, was always looking for that spark plug. Like, man, just give me 7 or 8 good minutes, to rest this guy and give our team like a great steal or something that keeps the game in your favor. And you're right, messing with stuff is risky business, very risky business. And you see it every day in every sport.
When Dallas started Beret in the finals, I felt like that came from a much smarter place because they needed offense. And in the first quarter and the third quarter, every finals game, their starting 5 was getting outscored, and they needed to figure out, all right, how do we flip this around a little bit? So they started Brea. This time around, the other thing is, the way Rapinoe plays, it's kind of unrealistic to expect her to play 2 halves plus all extra time and then kick one of the penalty kicks because she's kind of like a whirling dervish out there. Maybe you can't think about penalty kicks, but, man, those first 3 were some of the worst penalty kicks I can remember.
It was atrocious.
Done watching us?
And, one of the things about it is, remember, the U.S. women went to penalty kicks 2 games earlier. And a good team does their research, and they're saying to themselves, okay, this player went that way, this player went that way. And they're telling the goalkeeper before the PKs. They've got their scouting report. And on the flip side, that plays into the minds of the women or the men who took those PKs 2 games ago. They know that the other team knows that's where they go. And again, it goes back to psychology. Do you stick with what you know? Players practice putting their PKs in the same spot every time. But if they know a couple games ago that they put it this way and that keeper knows it, then in their head they're thinking, maybe I need to mix it up and start playing head games with them. And it gets ugly. And it goes back to your point, right? Just this is how you do it, and you do it well. Keep doing it that way.
Well, that's something people don't realize that Sly Stallone did in Victory. He had really scouted the Germans from the Allied camp. He had gotten a lot of information about where they went. That's one of the reasons.
And imagine he did all that before the internet too.
Yeah, and convinced the goalie to break his own arm. The Irish goalie. Actually, Michael Caine did that.
I think every conversation you and I have had on the podcast has somehow come back to that moment.
Hey, look, listen. I know it's been 30 years, but here's my take on this. Top Victory is a soccer movie. You can't. It's held the title for 30 years now. Somebody top it, for God's sakes. Let's talk about the future of this women's team. David Hershey had an article on ESPN.com today about, can this get any momentum for this women's pro league that really has not started off well and is down to 6 teams this year, and et cetera, et cetera. I don't see it. Here's my take on this. Tell me if you agree. I think we just like rooting for countries. I think we like seeing the flags. I think we like feeling patriotic. We like the tension of here's the best people in our country against the best people in this country. We like to watch them go, and it doesn't really totally matter what sport it is. Like, all right, I like soccer. Here we go. Here's the best in the world. I'm in. And, I think we can do this with any sport. I don't see how this translates to momentum now for a women's league. What do you think?
Agreed. Just look at the Olympics, right? I mean, who cares about speed skating?
Yeah.
Until the Olympics are up, and it's because they're wrapped in the national colors. And that's what it is. And, I do think there is a side that is showing there is serious and legitimate growth of soccer in the sports that in the States, that more and more people are taking it seriously. And without patting yourself on the back, you're a great example of it. You were somebody in the new media who at first, had a great distaste for the sport. And I know because you said it to my face for years and years. But now you've grown to appreciate it and enjoy it. And I think we're seeing more and more of that in the mainstream media. And we're seeing more and more of that just in general in the landscape. But you're right. As far as the generation, the momentum, the money that will be generated for women's soccer here in the States, I think it'll be minuscule. I'm cheering for it. I hope it happens. But I think people are going to move on very quickly from this. And that's life. That's what it is. There's a lot of fans of this Women's World Cup who I think almost felt obligated to be fans because other people were talking about it and it was their country and they want to be patriotic and cheer them on. And you're right. I mean, that was a huge percentage of the population, of the TV population watching, I think.
Yeah. Well, it was amazing how many casual people watch, though. Like, there was an article today about Twitter. It broke the record on Twitter for most tweets about one thing per second. Something like 7,600 tweets per second from people
startling.
Watching the Women's World Cup. The rating was fantastic. I think, I do think it helped, like, the time of the year. It's July. You just have baseball. The two best games ran on a Sunday. Perfect, optimal time to watch a sporting event. I do think that helped as well. But, I probably watched 5 of these games. Definitely grew a little bit attached to some of the people on the team. I don't know if that would translate to me telling my daughter, hey, Alex Morgan's team's in town we should go to that game. I don't see that happening.
No, you'll be met by a blank stare.
Hey, she watched the game yesterday with me. I was excited about that. 6 years old, watched the second half of the extra time. Yeah, she got mad at Japan, actually.
Ooh.
We had to talk her off that ledge. She doesn't like when the other team wins in anything. So she's like, oh, I hate Japan. We're like, no, this is okay. It's actually okay that Japan won in this case. But the penalty kicks, pretty funny to try to explain to a 6-year-old. Like, all right, now the game's about to totally change, and now we're going to kick 5, they kick 5.
It's a rational adult, much less a kid. I don't know what the solution is. It's such a sick way to end a competition, but if you keep playing and playing and playing, you risk serious, you risk injury, you risk the game just completely going downhill of people just literally walking up and down the field. I mean, I've played pickup games in the heat of the Tampa summer, and man, after 45 minutes, it's like, I'm not even sure this is soccer anymore. There's like 2 guys playing on each play, and that's it. I don't know what the solution is, but it's not PKs in the ideal world. But you're right, it just completely changes everything. And the PK, it was funny watching it in our hotel room. Our producer, Chris Alexopoulos, who's loving the fact I just gave him a shout-out right now, predicted the U.S. would miss their first 2 PKs. I mean, talk about a gutsy prediction. And he was right. And you could see once that first miss happened, just the confidence going right downhill. And, it's funny, too, watching the different mentalities and approaches to penalty kicks. People just trying to blast it, people placing it, people doing, quick approaches, people trying to get the keeper to commit first. There's a lot that goes on in a very brief time with those penalty kicks.
I have an idea. I'm prone to having an idea or two from time to time.
I can't wait for this.
This is one of my best ones, I think, ever. So I have a way to solve the women's pro sports thing problem and help what do we call the soccer league now?
Major League Soccer?
Major League Soccer. But what's the acronym?
MLS. MLS.
Yeah. So we basically go co-ed.
Oh, no.
We have every team has 3 girls, 3 women, I should say, and you have to play one at all times. Does that work, or is that the most ludicrous thing that's ever happened?
No, make it go away.
No, why?
I hate it. Oh, no, that's not good.
Come on.
And I'll tell you.
Look, the Portland Timbers have added Alex Morgan. Oh, my God. No?
Excellent use of Portland Timbers.
Thank you.
It is intriguing with Alex Morgan, but with the others, it's just kind of like, Really? And I've played co-ed games, and I've played a lot of them, and they're annoying, and I'm, God, this is going to come out wrong, and I hope I don't intend it to be that way, but
so, want me to just stop you now?
You don't know how to play when you have a woman on your team or against you. Probably even, no, when you're playing against a woman, in the sense that you don't do the things you normally would. You don't come in hard on these tackles. You don't, I don't know, you play differently.
Can I interrupt you? Can I interrupt you?
Yes. Are you mercifully
You're
interrupting
saying,
me?
Well, listen, your point is that there's a certain chivalry that is ingrained in all of us. And soccer does not encourage such chivalry. I can't even say
chivalrous actions, maybe?
Chivalry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. And, and I feel bad for the women who play in these co-ed games because they feel like they've got to do certain things extra well or differently, or not to hurt their team, not so much help. They're just trying not to hurt. And there are some wonderful talents out there. Look, trust me, there are thousands and thousands of women who could show me up on the soccer field. That's not my point. But, if they come in for a hard challenge, it's okay. But if you do it, you're like, hey, come on, Val, what's your problem? What's your deal?
Yeah.
And then you get the whole other team defending their woman against you, and it's not pretty. It's not good for both sides, I think. But it is intriguing. I like the fact you're thinking.
Thanks. Well, they do have mixed doubles in tennis.
And how does that go?
I mean, they have titles and stuff for it.
You know what explains, this is my new belief in life. Everything in life can be explained by professional wrestling. All right? Go to mixed tag teams in professional wrestling. What happens?
Yeah.
Right?
It's a disaster.
The woman comes out and versus a guy, and everybody's, oh, boo, bad, you can't do this. The guy lumbers around. It's no good for anybody. Nobody wins.
Yeah. That's pretty interesting. Well, listen, I'm just trying to save women's soccer. I'm sorry, I'm sorry the idea didn't fit your standards.
I agree. I know you have
solution.
plenty more ideas to come. Ask the sports scout. I'm sure she's got something.
I will say this. It does pass my test of would I watch this. If you told me, what game are you doing tonight?
Manchester City versus Vancouver.
All right. If Marto was on Vancouver, and you told me Marto was playing against Manchester City tonight, and Manchester City raised a big stink because they didn't want to play against a woman, and then it led to a whole, well, no, she has as much a right to play as anybody whole thing. And then she played. I think I would watch it.
Absolutely. As would I. No, I agree. And there's some wonderful female talents out there. I don't know. It's going to take a lot to get that league up.
Rick Bucher tweeted that the difference between women's soccer and men's soccer to the viewer when you're watching it is probably the smallest difference of any sport. And that doesn't mean that the women's players are as close to the men's players, but just like the passing, the touches, just the delicacy with how you have to play soccer, it's pretty close when you're watching it. Maybe they're not as fast, maybe the goalies aren't as tall, maybe athletically they're not. I don't buy that. Stuff like that.
What would Rick say the difference is between the WNBA and the NBA? Huge, right?
Yeah, because in the WNBA the players are more grounded.
I think the female soccer players are grounded as well. They're tactically smart. They make their runs. They put in their crosses. It's not these. There's very few instances of these dazzling one-on-one abilities like a Marta. That's a very isolated incident.
All right. So you disagree?
Apparently I'm in a very disagreeable mood today.
Why not? Listen, you just murdered women's soccer. I came up with a solution that was a win for everybody, and you killed it. You crapped all over it.
I tell you what, why don't you invest in the team?
In a women's soccer team?
Millions in the bank right now. Why don't you invest in the team? The sports guys are on the field.
Who's available? I'm gonna have Joe Mead look into this after we hang up.
I would love to see you own a franchise because there's one to be had. You could own like a roller, roller derby team or something like that. I think we're on to something now.
I've always wanted to own a AA team. So you got next year. You have the Olympics, and we'll see all these ladies again. We'll run it back in the 2012 Summer Olympics in London. The problem is, for whatever reason, nobody seems to care quite as much about Olympic soccer as World Cup soccer. Now, I know some of the reasons for that, but shouldn't at least be kind of in the ballpark of us caring, or no?
I think it should. You're right, and there is a huge drop-off between Olympic soccer and World Cup soccer, primarily, on the men's side, because the rosters are completely different. You're looking at a young team. You don't see the best of the best playing, and also because it happens during the summer, and that's the pro guys' downtime in professional soccer, and they have a very brief window. I mean, look, preseason is already firing up for the Manchester Uniteds and the Real Madrids. It feels like they just finished their season, a few weeks ago.
Right.
In reality, they really kind of did. So, there's pressure from the clubs to not have their players play in the Olympics because they don't want to burn them out. They don't want injuries. It's not a valuable commodity to them. For the women's game, it's a little bit different. They send much stronger teams. And I think there's probably more relevance and a greater honor in the women's game to do well at the Olympics than it is for the men's side.
So, if I told you that I could make the World Cup be every 3 years instead of every 4 years, would you sign off on that?
Well, I don't know. That kind of goes back to our argument of what works, why break it, right? We were talking about that earlier. Everything's going great for the World Cup. Why mess with it? And to take it every 3 years might kind of dilute it, dilute its importance. Would it still work? Absolutely. People would still flock to it and enjoy it. But remember, next summer, the beauty about soccer is there always seems that there's something big on the stage coming up or going on. And, next summer, it's the European Championships that ESPN will be televising.
Nice plug.
You like that? I'm awesome.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you're
Beautiful.
in a contract year. You just plug away, baby.
Nice.
You go from Men's World Cup one summer to Women's World Cup the next summer. Right there for the ESPN soccer entities, that's a huge 2 for 2. And if they can pull off the European Championships, and there's no reason to think they can't, because you're going to have some wonderful talent out there, because that is a tournament that everybody takes seriously. That's 3 summers in a row of killer international soccer. And then, World Cup qualifying is right around the corner, and that'll start taking stage and getting ready for, World Cup in Brazil. It's a machine that keeps on going. My wife used to say to me years ago, she's like, does the soccer season ever end? And I'm like, it just kind of takes these these little long weekends away. Yeah. And then it's always back. There's always something going on, always some reason to play and something to fight for. And I find that interesting with the sport.
Here's my counter-argument to your argument.
Okay.
First of all, 3 years could easily work. And 3 years is a long time. Like 3 years from right now, so it would be 2014. That's plenty of time to get fired up for another thing. And, the 4-year thing was something that got decided, in the 1800s? I don't even remember. I don't remember when we started doing every 4 years, and then everybody else followed suit. But things move faster now. And then the other thing I'd say is that athletically, I think you definitely see this with Olympians, and you see it with some soccer players, but sometimes people don't peak. Some people can peak within that 4-year span.
Yeah, no, I agree.
You might have somebody like, I'm trying to think, like maybe Alex Morgan morphs into the best soccer player in the world over the next 3 years. And by the time that 4th year comes around, she's not the best anymore. Well, why does she not get to do that in a World Cup?
Yeah, and another thing, too, is that, obviously the qualification process for the World Cups are grueling and brutal, and a lot of worthy players don't get the opportunity to play in a World Cup, because their country isn't as strong as some of the other countries, and to give them another chance to qualify and another chance to play on the biggest stage would help the game, internationally. I agree with that. And
remember the Dan and Dave campaign? Mm-hmm. The Reebok and the guy and both of them, and then they didn't make it, and then all of a sudden it's 4 more years till we get to see that. Those guys basically had an 8-year window where they had one chance in their primes to really do it, and they didn't come through, and that's it. Now they have to look back the rest of their life and wonder what happened.
No, I agree, and that's the unfortunate part about it. But I think if you're thrown out in Olympics or World Cup every 2-3 years, I think the allure of it might be slightly diminished. Might be.
Good. Let's find out. Let's make it every 3.
Go.
I guess we can't until like 2022 anyway. But I don't know anybody who would be against slightly more Olympics and slightly more World Cup. Like, when is the next World Cup? 2014?
Yeah, in Brazil. It's gonna be wild.
For the men's. That's like a
You're
lifetime
so
away,
there,
though.
Aren't you?
Well, just think about what happened to Josie Altidore in the last year. Like last year, he's like, oh, here's the young face of soccer. This guy's good, and then all of a sudden he's an afterthought.
Yep. Now he's struggling to find a team. He just landed one. No, I agree with you. I agree with you. That's the funny nature of the sport, particularly here in the U.S. because we're dying for a superstar. We're dying for that guy who is recognized on international terms in the soccer world. I mean, I think that's the one big thing that is really, really missing. If you ask, the U.S. soccer world, this nebulous world, what's your one wish? You say, oh, I'd love to win the World Cup. I think in reality they say we want that one Cristiano Ronaldo that is ours. This guy who is a game changer, who earns respect across the globe and will bring it to the U.S. And we don't have that. Landon Donovan is the closest thing we have. And you talk about age. He's already played in 3 World Cups. He's got at least one more. But his game by that time will probably be slowing down a little bit just because of. That's what happens when you get older,
We need like one Maurice Jones-Drew. That's who it'll be. It's going to be some guy who looks like he should be like a Danny Woodhead, like somebody who looks like he would be a 5'7" or 5'8" awesome running back who just for whatever reason at age 5 started playing soccer instead and has that same body like what Messi has.
Well, I
think that's our best chance.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a lot of guys out there that grew up playing soccer. There's a lot of guys in the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball who made a conscious decision to stop playing soccer and go somewhere else. And I think a lot of that was made because
money.
At the time they made that decision, soccer wasn't a known entity. I don't think they realized you can make money in this sport. And people do now when you see the numbers being thrown about with some of these international players. And, they had parents and coaches who didn't really know the sport and didn't want to direct them towards soccer. And I think that's going to start changing. I think in the next, decade or so, you're going to see guys who you could say, I could see him being, a defensive back or a linebacker in the NFL, but instead he chose soccer, and now he's just absolutely dominating. I think that's the course of the future for the U.S. men's and women's national team.
Well, you know what? Two things are going to help, I think. One is the fact that ESPN's been showing more games. It's just easier to see world-class soccer now. And then I do think it's interesting that a lot of the rich dudes who live in the United States have decided to buy Premier League teams and Italian teams. Like Jim Pilata got involved with AS Roma. The American money is going out, and so obviously something good is happening over there. And, I do think the door is a little open, a lot wider to have an American superstar.
I agree, and I do love the fact that, American money is being invested overseas, but I would like to see that American money being invested here in soccer.
That would make too much sense.
Right? I mean, it's kind of staring you in the face. And, I would love to see a celebrity owner. And there's no reason there can't be a celebrity owner from the U.S. in Major League Soccer. I love the fact that Steve Nash is a part owner up here in Vancouver of the MLS side up here. I think that's wonderful. But, I mean, there's no reason we can't get a Tom Hanks, God, who else would I love to see? I'd love to see Will Ferrell own an MLS team. Oh, my God, that'd be orgasmic for me.
Not Casey Anthony, right?
Not so much.
Okay.
Not so much. Zach Galifianakis was at the Real Madrid LA Galaxy game at the Coliseum. He braved Carmageddon on Saturday night, unlike you, my friend, and he made it to the Coliseum for soccer. I love the fact that guys like Zach Galifianakis are at games and care about it and are watching it, and I think you're going to see that trend kind of grow as well.
What is this Galifianakis pronunciation? Is that like some sort of Tampa thing?
Did I get it right?
It's Galifianakis.
Damn. I struggle with Greek names.
Listen, I'm the master of the mispronunciation, so I'm just happy somebody else mispronounced the name on the B.S. Report. I will say I'm not gonna eat a whole thing of crow, but I will have like a little crow appetizer. I think the MLS is doing better than I ever expected it would do, and the Portland-Seattle combo has been awesome. Not just for the league, but just for people who like sports. Like the atmosphere of those games, those home games, have been really good. And I don't know if it's just making the league from a fancier standpoint? It's the same stuff. It's almost like, yeah, you're still serving hot dogs and burgers, but now I have fancier plates. Because the bottom line is these aren't the best soccer players in the world, and I don't know how they ever overcome that. But the atmosphere of the games feels a lot better, and especially on TV. It just feels like a more significant sporting event. How important has Portland and Seattle been for the league?
They've been mammoth, for the league, for the sponsors, for the belief that MLS can continue to grow and is not just that guy trying to hang out with the cool kids, but is actually a cool kid now. Going to Portland games and going to Seattle games or Vancouver games or Philadelphia games, Toronto games, Galaxy games is now in. It's hip. It's the place to be, and that is epic for this league. And you touched that one word, atmosphere, has been running through my brain for probably about a decade with MLS. And people would always ask me, what's the one big fix? Do we need to bring in a David Beckham? Do we need to bring in these stars? I said, no. That all stuff is great. I'll take it and I'll embrace it, but the atmosphere needs to improve because for years Major League Soccer played in these huge cavernous stadiums, did not have the crowd. It was flat. The play was flat. It was not an appealing commodity. Why would I spend my hard-earned money going to a less than enthusiastic situation? Your entertainment dollars are being fought for constantly. And now when you walk into the stadium in Portland or Seattle or Philadelphia or wherever, you were saying to yourself, whether you're a soccer fan or not, hey, this is kind of cool. Wow, look at them cheering and chanting and really getting into this. And it's an environment that you want to be a part of, which leads to you saying, hey, maybe I'll buy a jersey. Yeah, my kid might like a hat. Then you start seeing the gear out on the streets. I'm a big fan of gear out on the streets. I use that all the time. I worked in Tampa when the Bucks were a joke. And I remember when Dungy took over and they rebranded themselves, Bucks merchandise started popping up all over the place. Same with Tampa Bay Rays. You see maybe more Rays merchandise than Bucks merchandise out in Tampa right now. And now I start seeing it in other places around the country. I saw a Rays hat in L.A. a couple weeks ago. And that's important. When you start seeing Timbers jerseys in random places of the country and Vancouver Whitecaps jerseys and not just Beckham Galaxy jerseys or Beckham or Donovan Galaxy jerseys. That's a big part of getting the word out. And, it's a league that is looked at much more seriously now from the eyes of just about everybody. And again, we go back to and I'm really not trying to pat our company on the back, but what ESPN has done for soccer in this country, you cannot put a figure on it. They have taken it seriously the last couple years. There are limited jokes about it. If you watch the top 10 plays just about every other day, there's going to be something from soccer on it, and they care about the product, and they are selling it. And they have almost single-handedly risen this sport up from where it was, and it is taken now at a much more serious level by sponsorship dollars, by marketers, by casual fans, by anybody. I've worked with a lot of great college football analysts and ex-NFL players through the years who, would see me and they would take it as an opportunity to kind of make a soccer joke. And instead, I get notes from them about, wow, that is awesome watching this. Wow, I'm really enjoying the Women's World Cup game. And, that's part of the process, that soccer is taking a hold. It'll never beat college football and NFL and Major League Baseball. Relax, old-timers. Don't worry about it. Nothing's threatened. If anything, embrace it. Embrace this new world and this new sport that your kids or your grandkids are going to be playing and talking about.
All right, since you just blew the company for 2 minutes, I will provide a quick counter. Yeah, that's pretty good. An NHL fan could argue that why didn't they do the same for hockey? And it's a fair point. Yeah,
I think if NHL went to ESPN, they would. I know I would care more about the NHL if they went to ESPN because they would put the programming hours and dollars behind it, and you would be watching it and enjoying it. I mean, the NHL playoffs this season were awesome, and they're always great, but this year something about it seemed different. That much more enjoyable and spectacular and great storylines. And I think if ESPN had it, can you imagine how many more hours on the networks would have been devoted to NHL coverage?
Well, and ESPN got rid of it, but then tried to get it back, and I think from the Bettman side, from what I've heard, there were some feelings hurt on the hockey side, like, oh, you abandoned us, and now you want us back, and it led to the NHL doing the last deal that they did, which in my opinion is a mistake because I was in 3 different hotels last spring, none of which had verses.
Right.
Yeah, you just take all the other stuff aside. Like, you want to be on networks where people can see your product, and unless they feel like versus is going to get to that next level in the next 3 years, and they might be right, but I do think it's hurt the sport in the last couple of years because it's just a harder channel to find for most people.
I agree.
The last playoffs were fantastic, and they, in a lot of ways, were probably more entertaining than the basketball playoffs. Hey, quick question: who's the best soccer player right now in the MLS? Do they have one? Is there an alpha dog?
I don't think so. I think
that's another problem, right?
Yeah, I think you can make a case for Landon Donovan. He's still scoring. He still does a lot of things. I think he's a little tired right now from all the soccer he's been playing lately. I think he's as alpha dog as you can get. I mean, Thierry Henry and the David Beckhams are always going to, have that. But you're right, there is no alpha dog. And one of the things with MLS, love it or hate it, is parity is a big part. That's just kind of the way it's going right now. And teams are figuring out, is it worth it to spend the millions on these guys? Do we get that return on and off the field? Because that's where MLS is right now. Is we can't just bring in these guys to do things on the field. That it needs to help us, put butts in the seats to sell some jerseys as well. And it's an interesting, it's an interesting debate, and particularly in this time of the soccer calendar. They call it the silly season with all the transfers and the signings. And MLS is not a big active player in that. Where the rest of the world in Spain and Italy and England and Germany, that's all they're talking about. Who's going where and when and why and the millions spent and what that means. And MLS has to kind of sagely sit there and say, all right, we could get this guy for a price that fits into our budget, so to speak, and will there be a payoff? Was Thierry Henry, was that a good move? It'll be interesting to see what David Beckham does in the last year of his contract. Will he sign for another year? And if so, at what rate? And will that be a good thing? I remember years ago when Beckham first signed and everybody said, and you and I had the conversation, is it a good thing? And I was like, absolutely, the coverage, the press. I think it's still a good thing, but it's been diminished a little bit in my eyes. I think America wants that Pele to come in and just revolutionize the game and make it important. And I think they're realizing, one player cannot do that. It can help for bursts, but it needs to be more of a collective team effort, so to speak.
I think the Portland-Seattle combo was a much bigger thing for the MLS.
I agree.
Than Beckham.
Yeah, have you been to Portland
just got a ton of attention.
Or Seattle?
No, I'm going to go this summer. I need to go. I need to bang out a Pacific Northwest MLS game and a Michael Pineda start. I need to do those on consecutive days. So I've been checking the schedule.
Let's work that. Let's make that happen, Bill.
Oh, can I come in the booth?
I got people who would love to make that happen, and I'd love to do it with you.
Maybe I could come in the booth. Am I allowed in the booth?
You're allowed in the booth. You were encouraged to be in the booth. We tried to get you in the ESPN 3D booth the other night. Carmageddon.
Yeah. It's Carmageddon, though. I was afraid of Carmageddon. I didn't want to go out of my house. And then it turned out it was totally overrated, and it was the best traffic weekend in the history of Los Angeles. Anybody could go anywhere they wanted at 90 miles an hour. But... we ran out of time to discuss the race, so we'll have to do that another time. Yeah, listen, I still
love my Rays, but last night
it turned into a state of soccer talk.
Yeah, and you know what?
Right?
We also did not talk any wrestling.
Bowling? Well, I'm glad you brought this up because when you're talking about the atmosphere, it made me think of last night, which I thought, all right, listen, turn off now if you don't want to hear about wrestling. The last night's atmosphere for the Punk Cena match was like out of the 1970s. Like, I just couldn't believe how great that crowd was. And I know Punk was home in Chicago, but I just can't remember a modern wrestling crowd that delivered the goods better than that. Did you see it?
I did not. But I was online today checking the results, and I'm excited. I'm hoping I can find Raw somewhere up here tonight. But what Punk has done the last couple of weeks is very old school-esque to me. And I miss the old school wrestling days. I miss those promos with the guys just kind of rambling at the microphone and talking. Where is Gene Okerlund? I was downloading old Ric Flair promos, and laughing and enjoying the hell out of it. And I think that type of stuff is good for the sport. I think it's good for any sport, to be honest, right?
Yeah.
And I think it'll be very interesting to see what WWE does with that looking forward. And you and I actually had a conversation, I think, about when CM Punk did that first that first bit in the reaction, and yeah, we did.
Yeah.
And it was in this unbelievably awesome gray area of, was that staged? Was that written? Was that planned? Or was that completely off the cuff and WWE, shut off his mic? And it's very easy to see both sides, that you could convince yourself that was totally planned or that was totally off the cuff. And either way, you were hooked, and you couldn't wait to find out what was going to happen next. And I love that. I love that in life.
I think when you think about the fact that this was like a 4 or 5 week angle, this was probably the most brilliantly planned and executed pro wrestling angle ever. Because to do this in the modern age where they're getting picked apart in the internet constantly and everybody's guessing what's going on and you have all these little inside locker room sources and all this stuff, like to just pull that off and get to the point of last night where I only pay-per-view WrestleMania every year. I got last night's show. I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought I knew what was going to happen, but I didn't know for sure. And the way they pulled it off, just spoiler alert in case you haven't seen it, but it was a 40-minute match. And they alluded to the Montreal screw job at one point, and it seemed like Vince was going to screw him over the way he screwed over Bret Hart. But then Cena didn't want it, and then Punk got him from behind. He pins him. Crowd goes absolutely crazy, ballistic. But really, one of the loudest crowd responses I've ever heard for real sports, fake sports, whatever. And then Vince tries to get the Money in the Bank. He can bring the next guy out. And Punk just escapes. He goes into the crowd with the belt. And the crowd's going bonkers. And he walks through the aisle, and he's holding the belt up, with all the crowd, kind of immersed in the crowd going crazy. And then he just leaves with the belt. And now it's like, you got to watch Raw tonight because this guy is no longer under contract, or so we're supposed to believe. And he may have just hijacked the WWE belt. Brilliant. Just unbelievable how well they executed. I was very proud of everybody.
Yeah, my question is, where do you go from there now? How do you keep that good vibe going, and how do you keep CM Punk in this very nebulous role of good guy, bad guy? No one really knows what he is right now. And how do you keep that going without him looking like a sellout or that it's diminished and now I'm tired of the storyline? It's
FYI though.
Time. Yeah.
That's usually when wrestling's at its best. When you have a guy who's supposed to be a bad guy, but the fans are responding to him. This happened with Stone Cold. This happened with Macho Man Savage way back. This happened with Jimmy Snuka. This rarely happens where the writers are like, this guy's a bad guy, and the fans are like, no, we like this guy. Let him be a bad guy, but we like this guy. It
translates into millions of eyeballs and dollars. And, the question is how much longer and how do you keep it going? And then, I think when you look back through the history, 10, 20 years down the road of WWE, this is going to be a moment. This is going to be a chapter of how this happened, what took place, and what is still to come. I can't believe how old I am, and I'm having this conversation. But
I don't care.
I don't either.
Can go to hell.
Either.
The last time wrestling really got mainstream, I wrote about this in my book. There's in my Red Sox book. There's a chapter about your wedding, a running diary of your wedding, and we're doing wrestling jokes the whole weekend because wrestling had made this huge comeback with Stone Cold Steve Austin, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and it was really fun to watch every Monday night, WWE against WCW. It never really, had a nice little 3-4 year run. The Rock got big, all that stuff, but it never really felt as big as it did during that little stretch. Hulk Hogan came back. That was a little brief Band-Aid. This is the first time I feel like casual people who don't even really care are kind of getting roped back in. So kudos to CM Punk.
It's kind of like the Women's World Cup, right? There's a lot of casual eyes on it now.
You know what, though? Not only did he get the belt, but he gets a B.S. Report appearance. He's coming on this week.
Get out.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you
CM
got my
Punk
note that
on the B.S. Report.
He mentioned you in that, I think it was an Esquire article or something. You got a shout out?
I've been working on it. Yeah, I've been working on it for a while. Yeah, he's coming on.
I'm down with Dallas. Hey, I know you probably got to get me off, and for good reason, but can we make a pact? Miami, WrestleMania 28, you, me, Gus, and company?
Is that where it is?
Oh, yes, I'm excited. What, The Rock is going to be there? Oh, I'm giddy. Come on down. What do you think?
I don't know if I'm allowed in Miami.
I'll
After all the LeBron jokes.
Grow a beard. We'll smuggle you in, no problem. Come on. I mean, think about it. You, me, and Gus at WrestleMania.
Well, it's pretty enticing. They
have
should
to
have LeBron.
Face.
They should have LeBron wrestle in the main event, and then with 3 minutes to go, just fall apart. Come on, SummerSlam. Where's that one?
I can't keep up with all the pay-per-views.
Yeah,
I told you last pay-per-view I went was in Tampa, and John Cena is the one who told me that we killed Osama bin Laden. It was an awesome moment in my life that I will never.
Oh, that's right. That actually happened.
It did. It totally happened. It was surreal. You know, he's my Tom Brokaw.
Well, here's how I hope the CM Punk thing plays out. This would be my personal preference for the whole thing. So they just string it along. Don't resolve it tonight.
Absolutely.
Don't have him wrestle. He has the belt. He's off. We don't know where he is. He's sending little videos like Osama bin Laden from his cave. Here I am with the belt. Here's what I did with the WWE belt today. He's just off. He's not involved. He's not wrestling.
He could treat it like the Stanley Cup, right? You know, the Stanley Cup is down for 24 hours. Here's where the belt is now.
That's the play. Like, bring it to Comic-Con this weekend.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is fine.
Hold on. I'm looking up where SummerSlam is. And then you... Actually, while I look this up, why don't you plug tonight's MLS broadcast?
Thank you so much. Manchester City, Vancouver, 10 p.m. Eastern, ESPN2 tonight. Actually, Manchester City, third in the EPL last season, and they got a ton of money. They have become a very big player, not just in England, but in the international soccer scene. So it'll be fun to see them. And there's field issues. We have a waterlogged field that canceled Vancouver's last game, and they have spent the last day and a half literally suctioning water off the field to try and make it playable. We don't even know if they're going to play tonight yet. How about that for a little subplot?
Well, how about this? SummerSlam is in Los Angeles, California on August 14th.
Oh, my God.
I think I'm going to be in the house. I'm going to make a prediction right now. I might have to break out my Macho Man T-shirt from 1986. I'm back. You know what? I so desperately tried to get my son into wrestling this last week and a half. He's too young. He's only like 3.5. Because my buddy Sal got his son Archie into wrestling over the last year, and it got to he loves Cena. And last night when Cena lost, Archie literally had a crying seizure. He was just devastated and upset. And then Sal tried to videotape it, and he actually attacked Sal and beat him up.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So it seems like age 5 is when you can bring the kids into wrestling. So I'm very excited for that.
Mine's 5.5, and I might have to smuggle him downstairs for some interesting.
Maybe he's right. Yeah, so my immediate goal for my son is to make him crap in the potty, which he hasn't done yet. He just refuses to do. He likes having his ass cleaned. I don't blame him.
Wear shorts.
Start wearing clothes. Yeah, start wearing clothes in public would be a big win for everybody, I think. And then ultimately down the road, wrestling. Well, that's it. If I've accomplished those 3 things, I win.
I can speak firsthand that I would love to see number 2 resolved after an uncomfortable Saturday afternoon and evening with you guys.
Yeah. Well, listen, he's a free child. Rob Stone, we will see you tonight. And you didn't even plug bowling, so you might as well plug bowling, too, before we go.
I don't even know when it's on next. I don't know.
Right.
Series of bowling coming in the fall. How about that?
Excellent. Savvy. Good plug. I don't even know when it's on next. By the voice of bowling, Rob Stone. We'll check you tonight as Manchester United goes through the motions against Vancouver. Manchester City.
Yeah.
Oh, Mark Stein's team.
Yeah.
It's Mark Stein's team.
There you go.
Is Tevez playing?
No, he's not with the team anymore. I think his deal. I think he just got sold today to Corinthians in Brazil. How about that?
Oh, because he had the big choke in the Copa.
Yeah. Yes, he did.
That's right. I'm following this stuff, Rob Stone. Remember 9 years ago when you were hosting Worldwide Soccer on ESPN? I was making fun of you. Yeah, good show, too much soccer. I've come a long way. I know about Tevez now. Yeah, thank you.
And we've even gotten you on a bowling show. You have somehow somewhat embraced part of my life. I appreciate it.
Producer Joe Mead here. One correction we should get to. The U.S. women's coach, P.S. Suntaga, and thanks, Bill, for not trying to pronounce that. She is a woman. I think you incorrectly referred.
Yes, he did say he early on,
he.
but he's Bill. I just let him roll.
Right, absolutely.
Oh, I meant she. It was a
clearly
part. Good correction though, Joe Mead.
There you go.
I'm glad you were listening. Rob Stone, thank you.
You bet, buddy. Anytime.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the B.S. Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.